Hello and welcome to Tommy Surfs. Today we're going to be looking at an oldie but goodie, and that is the Hypto Krypto by Hayden Shapes. Now if you're wondering why I chose this board, it's because it was on sale and it was just a really good opportunity because it was in my size. Also, it was pretty requested when I was doing the Sunday. Now I'm 5'8" and I weigh 140 pounds, and the board I'm going to be reviewing is 5'6" by 19 3/4 by 2 3/8, and it comes in at 28.62 liters. So Hayden says that the Hypto Krypto is for all surfers of any skills 1 to 8 foot surf. Now that's a pretty big claim, and if you know the history of this board, you know that Craig Anderson already proved the top end of this claim, and it's true. The middle recently got tested by Noel Solis, but in pretty good conditions. So I'm here to test the low end of the scale, 1 foot to maybe 3 foot in very soft to weak to moderate conditions. So now, rather than doing a surfboard review where I talk about the board, design, all that stuff, I think there's plenty of videos out there that I don't need to revisit any of that. And other people do it so much better than I would, so I'm not going to bother. Rather, I'm just going to do an evaluation of how it's surfed in the conditions that we're testing. Okay, so when we talk about 1 to 3 foot, okay, it's simple to make it just about the wave height, but there's other variables. Okay, you'll notice that at certain beaches you get rolly waves, other beaches you get more stand-up conditions. A lot of factors go into that: tide, the period of the swell, the speed of the wave. There's so many factors. Okay, so because of that, I have to talk about two things here. I'm going to talk about weak conditions and let's just say good. But when I say good, we're talking about good in 1 to 3 foot surf. Okay, in weak conditions, this board does not work very well. Okay, in good conditions, it works amazing. This is why it's important to understand, where I'm coming from when I talk about this board. When you look at the outline of this board, all right, it's obvious that it's, not your typical performance board, okay? And in fact, when you look at it, the thing is all fun in the front, but what doesn't, I don't think many people pay attention to is that it's all business in the back. In the front, the board is designed for groveling, but in the back, it's actually designed for performance. So yeah, you can get into a 1 foot wave pretty easily, in fact, but depending on the type of wave, sometimes it's surfable and other times it's not. Okay, and it's very, very important to understand this. Now, I'm going to say something that you have to really, really listen to carefully. Obviously, not everyone surfs the volume that's recommended, for an advanced skill level, right? And so when I'm talking about this board, I'm talking about it from my perspective, which is low-end advanced. If you're like a beginner, and I have a few beginner friends who have this board, but they oversized it, right? One of them, she's this tiny petite girl, weighs probably 95 pounds, and she's on a 6.0 Hypto Krypto. So now in that case, nothing that I'm saying applies. What I'm talking about is someone at my skill level being able to surf this, and is it something that you should consider? All right. So if you're a Bolsa Chica surfer and the vast majority of your waves are going to be soft and it's going to be somewhere between 1 and 3 foot, there are better options. I have people that swore by this, but now that I've surfed it, I'm thinking, why did you spend so much time struggling with this? Because there are so many easier options that could have been more beneficial to progression. Okay. So I'm not trying to ding on this board, because on the good conditions, 1 to 3 foot good conditions, right, where it's punchy, got a little bit more power, the thing's amazing. Okay, the design of this board makes it so that the thing turns and carves on its own. I've not felt so good putting a board on rail as much as I do every time I do this one. So there's a few clips I'm going to show here where I put it on rail on a very small face and that thing just turns. And what's funny is I start to turn, the board finishes it for me. So it is unbelievably fun and amazing, under the right conditions. If you have to, I would highly recommend rewinding this and listening to what I just said. Okay, I know in weak conditions, not the best thing to take out, okay? Doesn't mean it's not gonna work. It doesn't mean you can't catch the weight. But when you get up, you're gonna notice two things. And I did talk to two other friends who have, correct size Hypto Kryptos, meaning they have 5.6s and they're about my size. And one of the things they mentioned was that they felt that the board was tight. Okay, you have to understand, because of the narrow tail, when you're surfing a softer condition, the tail is not lifting out of the water. Okay, in fact, it's probably sunken in. And imagine now trying to turn a board when the rails are in the water versus above the water. Okay, so and you're not going that fast. Okay, so it's pretty important to understand all the mechanics of what's going on. Now, something I want to add, I had a bunch of you vote on the tail pad that I was going to put on this board. And what ultimately ended up happening is I bought the tail pad that won, but it didn't fit. So I had to buy a very specific tail pad, a pintail specific tail pad just for this board. That's how narrow it is. Now let's talk fins. So I had the opportunity to try this in actually 3 different types of fins. One I'm not going to talk about because I'm going to do a separate video. But I did it as a 2+1 using the Naked Viking Taylor Knox hatchet style fin with a trailer, and then also the Mick Fanning large. And everyone that I've talked to in the past, and including Noel Solis's last review of the board, they talked about how this board is a 2+1, and I would have to completely agree with that. It is next level as a 2+1. It still works as a regular thruster, and unfortunately I can't try it as a quad because my particular version only came in a 3-fin setup. But with the Mick Fanning, I just found it to be a little too tight. Maybe the fins were too big, but I typically run those fins in small days, which allows me to drive and project the board better. But in whatever the case, it felt really tight, and I think that also has to do with the narrow tail. Going back to what I said about my friends who felt like the board was tight. Narrow tail, not enough speed, kind of sinking, it just feels tighter. Now in this next footage, you'll see that I get a lot of speed. In fact, I just got ahead of myself and I was leaning too far forward, which made me fall. But people will start making comparisons, when they watch these videos, and they'll say, oh, that's probably faster than the Mashup or something like that. Definitely when the waves and the conditions are bigger, punchier, this is a faster board. But when we're talking about 1 to 3 foot small, this thing has a lot more rockers, so it's not as quick through the flats in those smaller, mushy conditions. So back to the most important question, is this something that you should get? This is a fantastic groveler. And I completely agree, it works 1 to 8 foot, and based on what Craig did, up to 20 feet it looks like. But on the lower end, 1 to 3 foot, it needs a moderate to good and better weight. Okay, so softer conditions, I just think there's better options. So should you get it? If you surf Huntington Beach, Newport Beach, the better beaches, I would say yes. If you're a Bolsa Chica surfer, if you oversize it, that's fine. I think it'll work. If you're looking for a performance groveler at Bolsa, I don't think this is the best board. So for those people that surf Bolsa, I would say consider this board as a actual step up to the Mashup. So the Mashup really covers you 1 to 3, maybe 1 to 5 foot in those soft conditions. And then this Hypto Krypto, once it starts getting punchier, and I mentioned in the Mashup review that board's not all that great for when it gets punchy. This is the filler, right? So this could ultimately be part of my, let's say, 3-board quiver. I don't like the idea of a 1-board quiver. That sounds crazy to me. Now, obviously, if cost is a concern, then this would be a great 1-board quiver, because it does, probably better than most boards I've tested, cover you in a much wider range of conditions. Again, just not to beat a dead horse here, but on the low end, mushy 1 to 3, better options, but it'll still do the job. It just probably won't, be as reactive and lively as you'd want it to be. So it seems a little draggy, tail's sort of pinny, so it does sink a bit when you don't have the speed to plane the board easily. So anyways, that's enough about that. So now, just in case you are interested in getting this board, let me help you size it. Okay, so I personally think this board is a great performance groveler for the high-end, intermediate, and up. Okay, so in that particular case, you probably want to size it like you would your normal groveler. Okay, I would put it at 0.2 as the ratio. So what that means is take 0.2 and multiply that by your weight, and that's the literage that you want to get to. Okay, so that puts me at about 28 liters. Right, so give or take. Right, it's not an exact science, but I think that's a great sizing mechanism right there, the ratio. All right, and then if you are a beginner, you can oversize this, but here's the problem, for me at least. I tested the 6.0, you know, and it's stable, it's great, but it is tight. So if you want a little bit of looseness and you're trying to learn how to turn a board and stuff, that narrow tail doesn't help. So you're better off getting a slightly shorter board with a wider tail, or even something like the Sunday. I think the Sunday is fun in the front, fun in the back. Okay, this one's fun in the front, business in the back. So take those things into consideration, and I hope this was helpful. So last thing, like, subscribe if you haven't already, and I apologize again for taking so long on this video, and I'll try to get some more out. My daughter's off to college again. She's leaving in a few weeks, so I get my YouTube studio back. All right, have a good one.